Good afternoon. We'll now open the public hearing on Senate Bill 459. And this time the chair recognizes Senator Gannon to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Senator Evis. I am Senator Bill Gannon from the Wine District of New Hampshire. 12 beautiful towns from Sandown to Epping to the coast in Seabrook. How did I get here today? I read the governor's veto. I thought that was a good place to start. I read the governor's before veto, and I looked into what they would pass and what they wouldn't. And so that sort of influenced me not to. And it isn't that I'm pro or anti on the bathroom part. We won't deal with that today. I decided to work with the three areas that I believe are what the governor wanted in her veto, what she said she would pass. And I took those things out that she wouldn't pass. I look at this as a feminist bill. I have three daughters. I look at myself as a feminist. I do have a son also, but I want women's rights based on equality. I want them to have all the opportunities, advantages, no discrimination against men. So this bill deals with sports, it deals with locker rooms, and it deals with prisons. And again, we're not dealing with bathrooms for a numerous number of reasons. I did see the enforcement problems as they have the other governors. I'm not necessarily for or against the other bill, but I felt that was a weakness and that would not get a bill signed this year. So I am someone who likes 3/4 of a loaf rather than none. So I want fair and equal competition in sports. I've been working on this bill more or less in different measures for it's either 6 to 8 years, but we've been trying to finally craft it correctly so it's acceptable. So when my daughters go out on a sports field, if it's someone who's a young person who's there was someone they had played on a boys soccer team the year before. About a year and a half ago, my daughter, who is in high school playing varsity sports, 3 sports a year, different sports, she's aware that, and we could see physically that this person was stronger, faster, almost 6 feet tall, just wasn't fair on the soccer field. It was a danger for her physically, and it just put the other person at an unfair advantage. So some sports has been brought up before, bowling or something, or darts, or there are things that, but a soccer field, there's fields that don't let themselves be safe for both sexes playing together. I want my daughters, as I have one, she's a senior. She does 3 sports a year. She's a varsity athlete at a college. And she developed in high school. Before that, she's always been a captain of a team. She's always got leadership abilities. And she's developed, if you saw her as a little girl, shy and quiet. And sports has been great for her, has allowed her to, it influenced where she went to college. Colleges were looking at her. Ivy Leagues, little Ivy Leagues, little Ivies. My younger daughter has the same thing. I would hate to have my daughter cut from a sports team or anyone else's daughter because a male athlete took her spot. So there are unintended consequences here. Again, we talked about leadership roles, unfair physical advantage, danger out on the field, and that's mostly what I look out on the sports field issue. Locker rooms, I look at as a different thing, and it's a public safety. We know who they are. You're going to have problems in a bathroom. You don't know who's there. I see the problems with the bathroom bill. We know who's on a sports team. We know their gender. We know they're biologically female or male. I did listen to the GLAD lawyer, and I will look more into the university part of the bill, maybe amend it, maybe not, but I will pursue that further. Again, women come to me, and I do hear this brought up a lot. They're like, why can't, this is a common sense thing to a lot of one side of the issue. They're uncomfortable when an individual of a different sex is in the locker room with them. And that's why we are including locker rooms here. Prisons, again, they speak themselves. The matron or warden is going to decide what's the best and safest route. So I'm not really going to go further there. And other than that, we've talked about a lot of the issues in the earlier bill. So I'll just leave it there.
Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking my question. Do you believe that transgender girls are girls?
I don't think it's relevant what I think on that, but I don't think it's a relevant question what I think personally. I do think that girls have a privacy interest. in a locker room. Women have a locker room privacy interest. I think there are differences between the sexes. I think women are entitled to a privacy interest. I think it's a fundamental right. I think the state then has a compelling state interest and it doesn't matter. The other people have talked more about a safety issue. I see it more as a privacy issue. That's how women address it to me. I don't really have women coming up to me and saying, I haven't encountered that very often. Like we had the woman who was the coach testify today. That hasn't been what I've run into. I'll run into people coming to me and saying, we want privacy. We're very uncomfortable with men in our bathroom and locker rooms. Again, I didn't include the bathroom part, but in the locker room, they're uncomfortable with their daughters being in a mixed company.
May I follow up? So I asked you this question because I'm looking at the bill and and on line 9 of the bill, you actually have put out based on the biological sex at birth, and we've heard testimony.
I'm sorry, I do have an amendment. It didn't get to you, which was supposed to get to you today.
Is it 0003S?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have it. It was
Okay.
in my folder. Did
Okay,
you
I
get
didn't
it?
know.
Here it is. Right here.
It was, he probably hasn't seen it.
It's just under your collection.
It's right in front of me.
All right, so we did get it. Thank you.
Yeah, I did it that way because of court rulings. Worded this way, I think it is less susceptible to being thrown out on the advice of many counsel.
Okay, so
So that was done purposefully, the change to, biological sex. Just like, in the most part, you've heard it said, was it in Congress where someone's was being cross-examined, they said, do you know what a man is and a woman? You're aware of that one? Last year. It doesn't matter. Go
not
ahead
the
with your
top of my head,
question.
but
Just
okay.
rephrase
So
up. Run
back
you
to
off.
your amendment then.
Yes,
Working from the intention of the amendment, which reads, and I'm just on line 3, for the purposes of this section, which would be inserted into section 1 of the original bill, for the purposes of this section, biological sex shall mean the male and female biological sexes. And I mean, we have heard, and someone who has testified to this is still in the room, that there are intersex people. So is it, I mean, why is there such an insistence on a very, very strict binary?
again, my experience has been, the women I talked to, even last night, I was out in a group setting. They brought up, what bills are you doing lately? And I said, well, tomorrow. And they would see this as a black and white issue that, yes, we know what women are and what men are. I believe I recognize, again, I might be confused. That's why I didn't put the bathroom portion in. I don't know if on first glance at seeing someone in the bathroom, if I know their biological sex. A student in a school, they've, it's in their record whether they're male or female. So I feel that when they're going on a sports team, had they been a female going to male, male going to female, it would be in their history at the school what sex they were. I do fear in the bathroom situation, you could run into problems like you brought up in Boston and things. I think there would be opening ourselves as a state to being more confused. I think if we limit it to sports fields, to locker rooms, and to prisons, I think we're in a safer route that can advance. I think the other bill is going to have the same problems it's had in the past. So I, again, read the veto messages of the past two governors. I feel that this meets that. I've had other people look at it who were in agreement that this would comply and should, if the governors stay on message to what they would live with. Their veto message, I believe, is, which may not be what you want, but I think it will be acceptable to them.
May I follow up?
You're recognized.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not, just to be clear, not talking about bathrooms. That's not in this bill.
Yep.
I'm right there with you. So
Okay.
we don't have to talk about that.
Sure.
We just did for a long time. So new topic, sports. Which is the subject, the main subject of
Sure.
this bill, and what you have
And locker rooms.
and locker rooms. Getting to sports, which you just talked about.
Sure.
Right. You talked about fairness for your daughters.
For
Well, you brought your daughters into it.
I'll bring I did.
Yeah.
I should
So-
never do that. They always get mad when I do, but I did. So yes, fairness to
So-
most, 99 is the other person previously testified. I think she was a gym teacher, special ed teacher. She testified 1%. So 99% of the women, I think, would be addressed with my bill.
So
Would be happy.
to achieve the fairness, though, that I think you're going for in the way you've described it, right? Shouldn't the fairness be based on a physical ability versus what you believe to be a characteristic? For instance, there are women who grew up playing soccer with Mia Hamm and Kim Little. And is it unfair that somebody didn't get on a team because they had extraordinary talent? Is there an inherent unfairness that some kids didn't make the swim team because Michael Phelps was on it and his wingspan, like we know, it's larger. And some people, Lance Armstrong, bigger heart. You know, there's reasons that some people excel, and it has nothing to do with their gender identity, but it does have to do with a physical, physicality that they bring to the sport. So if we're going to judge on fairness, should the fairness not be if sport is physical, it should be the physical?
With gender and opportunities for females. So you're going to, most men are biologically, it's like 40 to 50% stronger upper body, about 30% stronger lower body. So on average, with most people, this will cover 99% of the world, 98. Yes, it won't cover the 6'6" girl who can dunk the ball very easy. But I think this is the best we can do in the real world, is this, to make sure that women have the advantage, so they get the opportunities to be seen by have opportunities for scholarships, college coaches calling them, even just for the leadership quality. The shy girl who becomes the captain of the team could be cut by a boy who could take that role. So I don't want to see that happen. I want the females. That was Title IX. The whole idea of women's sports was to give them these opportunities. I think you'd be taking it away if you do it your way.
I'm
I'm
not bringing anything up.
I thought
Like,
you were.
you've got the
I thought
bill.
you were suggesting that we do it a different way.
Well,
But you're not. Okay.
So just to follow up on what you just said, and you
Sure.
in your testimony, again, the losing a spot to a boy. Do you believe that transgender girls are girls and transgender women are women? Same on the other side of the coin. Transgender boys are boys and transgender men are men. That's, and to be clarifying, feminism is about equality for everybody.
I think
Everybody.
the results of not doing it this way would be taking away from a large number of women. I think if you did it your way, testing on ability alone, you'd be taking away advantages and opportunities from, I never used the word, but cis female, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Seeing no further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative? You're up.
Really short.
Okay, I think you can assume, I am in favor of this, just as I was in favor of the previous bill. I think that it's unfair to take opportunities away from females. Not only that, but it is unsafe for females to participate in athletic events with males. If the males identify as female, that doesn't take away the fact that they were born male and have higher strength abilities based on that, and how their bodies have developed. It's different, and I think it's unfair to women. I think of my own idea of what is feminism, which is something I had to think about constantly in high school, because every time I turned around, people would ask me if I was a feminist, because I was in that program where I was the only female. And it would be the writings of Susan B. Anthony that I think were very influential to me, that women should have the ability to be treated fairly and be able to take care of themselves. One of the things that she was a proponent of was that they be allowed to work in fields where they can take care of themselves and earn their own living, and that makes them safer because they can make their own decisions. But the truth remains that women are not as strong as men. I mean, if you ask any woman who has been sexually assaulted, she will tell you that's a big part of why that happened. So that's my idea of feminism, and I think that it is not incongruent with feminism to be in favor of this bill and to say that women should be competing with other women or females, you know, the high school level. And I mean, if you want, I just read something, and I mean, a really shocking case out of Washington, and if everything that this young woman is saying is true, this is unbelievable. So this happened in December in Puyallup, Washington, where she's a wrestler, and she's been a wrestler for a long time, and she was matched with someone who she later found out was transgender, and she says she was sexually assaulted in the middle of the match. She stopped the match by quitting and giving up and allowing herself to be pinned, and then told her mother immediately afterwards that I was sexually assaulted during that match. And right now that's going through the system. It's not been adjudicated yet. She's, you know, just December, but that's amazing. And because of the difference in strength, she just gave up quickly, you know, when it was happening. And for that to have happened in the middle of the gym with everybody watching, I mean, I've never heard of such a thing. That's just shocking. But she just being female does make you more vulnerable because you are not as strong as men.
Thank you, Representative. Sarah Terrell? Yeah. Sarah, have you gone? You've gone, I believe. Okay. Nancy Biederman? Beth, do you want to speak? Scar? Is she gone too? Okay, everyone's left us. Jennifer Smith, are you still here? You checked off both. Nope. This is going to be a quicker afternoon. Hazel Kane. Boy. Lion. Elmi with the nice Italian name that I don't want to butcher again. Caraccia. You're not that tall, I told her. My daughter's got an inch in here. She likes the height.
I do too, so I wear heels.
You got heels on, so you don't hate the height that much.
Hello again. Again, I'm going to echo what you are likely to hear from others who oppose this bill, but my name is Amy Teravecchia. I'm with 603 Equality. I wanted to share my personal experience as well as someone who played sports to speak to the sports and locker room issue. There's a lot of conversation happening around the added advantages of someone who is born an assigned male at birth, of having strength over female athletes. And strength is not the only determining factor in someone's athletic ability. We see that going on in the Winter Games with Olympics right now. Different athletes in different fields can benefit from things like agility, from flexibility. Sometimes a smaller statue is better when you're looking at sports like gymnastics. And quite frankly, as Senator mentioned earlier too, your physical capabilities are not necessarily tied to your gender or your biology. They're tied to your physicality. So I don't think that there is an unfair advantage given to trans women in female sports. If you look at the statistics of how many trans women participate in sports, it's a very small percentage. And as you mentioned yourself, Chairman, that your daughter's benefited greatly from participating in sports. I would hate to deprive young trans people the opportunity to also reap those benefits from participating in sports and building their abilities through teamwork and through sportsmanship. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So also there's I guess a concern that transgender women will take away scholarships and opportunities for furthering their athletic careers, if you will. Are you aware of any transgender women or men in New Hampshire, since you're from 603 Equality, that have gained athletic scholarships?
I am not aware of any trans athletes who have gained athletic scholarships. I am aware of young trans athletes who have gained important skills that they've been able to carry through to other parts of their lives through being parts of team sports. And again, I'd hate to deprive those young people of those opportunities.
May I follow up?
Yes.
So there's a case that has been moving through, and we heard from the mother of one of the athletes who was here on an earlier bill, and having testified before this committee and before the House before, we heard that this young athlete belongs to a soccer team, a high school soccer team that has, at least when they testified last time, had never won a game. But the girls really love playing together, but they're measured against other athletes. They're not really ranking. No one's taking anything from anybody in that space. So should that team improve or gain some different athletes, would it be fair to bump the transgender athlete off because now they're winning?
Absolutely not. In addition to formerly playing sports, my daughter also plays sports. And, lots of different things can affect a team's ability to win or lose at both individual games and over the course of a season. Sometimes that's coaching, sometimes that's the team dynamics. Sometimes that can come down to the weather. I remember a specific softball game where the sun was in our girls' eyes for, the first 3/4 of the game, and that affected their ability to play. So there's lots of different variables. And I think that especially for young people in sports, the overall benefit of being able to work in community with one another, with being able to build and cultivate leadership skills, communication skills, teamwork, those are really valuable life skills. And those young athletes, whether they are cis or trans, should not be deprived of the ability to build that up with each other.
All set. Thank you very much for your testimony. Sarah Smith. Everybody gives up on us. Pasha, are you still here? I thought I saw your shirt in the distance, so
I try to wear bright colors so you know I'm here.
that's good. No, I like it.
So there's that. I'm going to diverge from it somewhat, just to follow your directive.
Thank you.
But honorable members, I'm Pasha Roberts. I live in Wilmette, New Hampshire. I'm on the board of 603 Equality, and I'm speaking in opposition to 459. And I'll keep it short. The essence of this really is, again, that the governor has vetoed near identical bills. Let's see. Since the whole biology thing was brought up, I'll address that briefly. I mean, I work extensively in the intersex community. I'm brought into medical schools to talk to students about the experience. There are 35 ways that nature is wild. You don't realize that because you don't see it and because we are medically erased. I had 2 operations as a child to bring me into what you expect me to be. That issue will get resolved 20 years from now in the legislature. But right now, what we need to realize is that there are a lot of ways that people vary. And anyway, I'll leave it at that. If you have further questions with it, I'll say that in the process of following these issues over the last year, I worked extensively to support a high school student who was transgender, watched a lot of soccer games, had a lot of bleachers, didn't know anything about soccer, learned that in the process. She was never the biggest person on the field. there's always somebody bigger, stronger, faster. There's, when she was in track, their team didn't finish well. There's a lot of things, they just had fun and played. But it's not like she had she wasn't like a 300-pound linebacker that just won the games. She was out there with her community, with her friends, and that was taken away by 1205 last year. This bill brings us back to, again, enforcement problems. It brings us back to prison guards or school nurses observing genitals without consent. It opens up, there was a case in Utah where a girls' soccer team lost, and they accused one of the players of being transgender and made her get the genital inspection so that, to discourage her from playing. I think she dropped out. This kind of travesty is just going to be encouraged by this kind of thing, just punitive. I don't know in Utah whether they thought she may or may not be transgender, but the last part of this is really that I know a lot of people here consider yourselves to be proponents of small government, of freedom and liberty, but small government does not peek into its citizens' pants. A liberty-minded legislator leaves these concerns to local control. This is not what this law is doing. It's creating some kind of statewide gender police with no biological definition. The amendment says that the definition of biological sex is that a person is a member of that biological sex. I have all kinds of people from medical schools that will tell you that there is no easy, simple definition. It's not X or XY. It's not the SRY gene. It's not penis or no penis. It's much more complicated than that. It's not testosterone. Women have testosterone. But basically this kind of wild law is going to go out and create this state-led gender police. And the governor knows this, and they're going to veto this again. So it's just a waste of time. I suggest that the committee save the effort and declare this bill ITL. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. I'm sorry, Senator, go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question.
Yeah.
So with respect to the student that you were in contact with who now can't play on their team, do you think the effect of bills like this are to make it so inhospitable to try to play sports that transgender kids are just going to give up and not get in the arena, if you will, because the state is making it known, we don't want you?
Yeah, that's what happened to her. And, her peers rejected her. She's made fun on school buses. I think there's a case, a friend of mine is a school bus driver in the region. And, there's a boy that was put on a bra and pretended that he was her until he was shut down by the coach. So this whole environment sort of took her ability away to play the sports literally and in terms of community. So she's just doing other stuff, and I think she's going to go to college in Canada and leave the state entirely.
All set? Thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
Nancy Brennan, you still here?
Can't get rid of me.
Who said we want to? You're very enjoyable.
I just want to say before I start my testimony that while I was sitting here listening to things, I looked a couple things up, and I do have that study on sports, and I will be happy to send it to you. Also, the young man with the beard from Massachusetts who said most rapes in prison are trans women against real women. And I can't find that anywhere. I find the opposite. And I last year when we were going through this, I have this much stuff I used to bring every time in case I got a question. So I will send you that if you're interested, because I think it's important. Yes, we all have opinions, but we also need to see what the facts are. That's it on that. Now on to the next one.
Oh, I thought you were all done. Teasing.
No,
I'm
actually,
sorry.
this is testimony from someone who couldn't be here. Rosie Emmerich, a Hooksett resident and parent of 3 kids who participate in activities and sports. There's been a lot of talk lately about transgender kids in sports, but nobody is actually talking to transgender kids. Nobody is asking them about their experiences or listening to their coaches, teammates, or families. My transgender child currently dances and is so excited to play soccer this year. She didn't choose these activities to win or be the best. She chose them because they bring her joy, make her feel strong, and let her see herself improve when she works hard. That's what youth sports should be about. We are being asked to legislate against a problem that doesn't exist. Transgender kids make up 1% of the youth population, and only a fraction of those play sports. We're talking about a handful of kids across the entire state. Yet we're spending legislative time on this instead of addressing the real threats to girls in sports. The evidence is overwhelming about who actually harms women and girls in sports. Child Help, an organization that works to prevent child abuse, reports that between 14 and 29% of young athletes experience sexual abuse before the age of 18. Coaches are the ` perpetrators. A survey of Olympic-level athletes about their experience of sports in their lifetime showed nearly 28% of athletes say sexual, emotional, or physical misconduct is a problem in their sport. Nearly 10% experienced inappropriate sexual contact themselves. Of those who came forward, 18% faced retaliation, and 93% never reported it. Let that sink in. Up to nearly 1 in 3 young athletes experience sexual assault, most often by their coaches, and 93% who experience misconduct stay silent. And to that unequal opportunities, pay, resources, and facilities compared to boys' programs, these are the crises that deserve your attention. But instead of protecting girls from predatory coaches or fighting for equal funding, we're debating whether my child, who just wants to play soccer and dance with her friends, should be allowed on the team. This bill doesn't protect anyone. It targets vulnerable kids and tells them they don't belong. It tells my child her participation is a threat, while real threats go unaddressed. Trans kids are playing sports in New Hampshire safely and successfully. Their teammates accept them. Their coaches support them. The sky has not fallen. I'm asking you to ITL SB459 and focus on the real documented problems facing girls in sports. Talk to actual trans kids and their families. Listen to what's really happening in our schools. Protect all our kids by addressing real harm, not imaginary threats. Thank you. And she does give sources for what she has stated.
Any questions? We're all set. We're all set. Thank you. Did I do Amanda Azad yet? Not for this one. Come on back.
Baby that's very cranky and needs to be fed. Thank you.
We'll get you home.
I know you all are tired as well. It's been a long afternoon. But good afternoon, Chairperson, Committee. My name is Amanda Azad. I'm the Policy Director at the ACLU of New Hampshire. I wanted to save most of my testimony for this bill because it kind of hits a chord with me based on some experiences and folks that I've talked to. So please bear with me. We have testified against many bills like this one. As I mentioned, one was just vetoed on Friday, one was vetoed last summer, and one was vetoed the year before that, and then the hearing right before this hearing. All women deserve protection, and considering the level of discrimination, harassment, and assault transgender women experience, we should be passing more bills for them in their best interest instead of targeting them with seemingly never-ending lineup of anti-trans bills. putting all women in situations where they need to start carrying around their birth certificate or some type of proof in case people question them, which they absolutely will, is not a good look for New Hampshire. Discrimination protections are important, and trying to roll them back in New Hampshire makes us look bad as a state. These were protections that were passed with a bipartisan effort, signed by a Republican governor. Bills repealing them were vetoed twice by another Republican governor, but now we are dealing with a constant fire hose of discrimination rollback bills that create, frankly, weird, uncomfortable, and potentially dangerous situations where we are policing people's bodies. It fuels discrimination and encourages vigilantes, pushing the boundaries of privacy and safety, and in some cases, assaulting people in order to try to classify people in public spaces. All of these bills are targeting transgender people in vulnerable situations, but have the impact of hurting us all and creating a really uncomfortable environment that no one wants to deal with. In case anyone is questioning, gender dysphoria is a real, very real thing. These bills are impacting real people. These are people who are loved. These are people who deserve dignity. They deserve all the respect, kindness, and compassion. And instead, we are here dealing with this and 5 other versions of this. We should be taking steps to prevent assault against transgender and gender nonconforming individuals. But instead, research shows that when we have schools denying gender consistent access to locker rooms and bathrooms, there are associations with greater sexual assault among transgender and non-binary teens. Folks have already testified to that. Why would we invite this behavior in different spaces? Research also shows that transgender individuals experience assault, abuse, and family rejection at high levels. So you would think that we should be even more sensitive to their treatment if they end up incarcerated, oftentimes stemming from that type of trauma. I have personally interviewed several transgender women while incarcerated, oftentimes for drug-related convictions that are likely connected to trauma they have experienced, only to be incarcerated in housing situations that have led to abuse, severe and life-threatening injuries, and incredibly sad isolation. These are people. These are someone's children. They deserve to be protected. This is why we trust DOC to be experts in safety, and this is why we have federal laws like the Prison Rape Elimination Act. This legislature does not need to be interfering with and taking away discretion or micromanaging the people who frankly know best. Litigation like that which led to my interviews does not need to be something that happens in New Hampshire. Many times people in these situations are held in isolation or in much higher security than their offense deems necessary due to the overwhelming danger that they face. I have spoken to people who have suffered brain trauma due to attacks in prisons because of their identity. And even if it is hard for some to understand people that seem very different from themselves, it is deeply upsetting and sad to see another person suffering in this way. Do not roll back discrimination protections. Let the professionals follow the Constitution, follow disability laws, follow the Federal Prison Rape Elimination Act and other policies at different levels and best practices because they understand the threats and the very real harm transgender people face incarcerated. Do not go after some of the most vulnerable people in one of the most vulnerable situations and try to enforce anti-trans bans in an area that needs to be left to the discretion of people who know the situation and can best keep people safe. I urge you to ITL this bill. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Questions? All set. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. David Trumbull. Thanks for your patience, Attorney Trumbull.
Of course. So, thank you all for being here and listening to us. My name is David Trumbull. I'm from the town of Ware, and I oppose this bill for 3 reasons. I'll start off with some overview, and then I'll go to sports and prisons. my overview is that this bill misses the opportunity to teach our young people the truth, that transgender girls are girls. They're not boys. That intersex people are real. That transgender people are not the other that you should be afraid of. How can you, Senator Gannon, I understand you want to protect your daughters. I have a daughter and a son myself. I get that. But you can't protect young women by holding on to an old idea that is not true anymore. The old idea that there's only two possibilities, men and women. You've heard the scientific evidence. There's 30 different possibilities between those two are the majority, the vast majority. But this bill is predicated upon scientific fiction. And it's time for us to put that in the past and say, that's not all there is in life. Intersex people exist. Trans people are real. This is a chance to teach the next generation the right thing, rather than base this law on an old idea that is just not true. So I'd like to start with prisons, if that's okay. Transgender women in prison, you've heard some numbers, but I'd like to make it simple. The general population faces about 3 or 4% sexual assault. Trans women face 13 times that. It's over 50%. Rape in the general population in the prison is about 2 or 3%. For trans women, it's 40 to 50% with multiple assaults. So it's almost a given that if a trans woman is in the men's prison, they will be raped repeatedly and sexually assaulted, 13 times more likely. What happens then is that the people who run the prison put them in solitary confinement for their own good. But they don't want to be put in solitary confinement. That would be like being in the space of a couple of these desks put together for 23 and a half hours a day with no one to talk to. It's unfair. It's certainly going to lead to mental illness and psychosis. Imagine being in an 8x10 box by yourself all day long with nobody to talk to for your own good. 85% of trans women in prison end up in solitary confinement, 50% for over 2 years. That's a double punishment. They get punished once for the crime they committed, then they get punished again for being trans. So this bill would double punish people just because they're trans. And there are certainly other alternatives that could be adopted. Certainly. Yep.
Regardless of the prison that they're put in?
Aren't they?
If you're trans, either prison you go to, you're going to have a much higher.
Thank you for that question. I'm not an expert in this, but from my research, that is not the case. A trans woman in a women's prison is not that likely to be assaulted. Also, there are places in the country that have a non-binary wing. It would not require building a new prison. Every prison, if you've done any work in institutions, you know there's lots of locked doors. They could easily reorganize it so that non-binary inmates could be put together in a wing of their own, and then they would not face assault. And I know that's been done in California, and that has been preferred by those inmates. That's an easy, less restrictive alternative. Fundamental rights at stake. When we lock somebody up, take away their liberty, we have to look for less restrictive alternatives. There's no reason to be putting transgender women in a men's prison knowing that we're condemning them to being raped repeatedly, sexually assaulted, then ending up in solitary confinement. That's a double punishment. So there are alternatives. Any other questions about prison? Oh, okay, go to sports. Okay. I've been coached youth sports for like over a dozen years, so it's near to my heart. And I look at this issue, the International Olympic Committee, they have 3 guidelines when making this decision: access, competition that's fair, and safety. So I think the decision should be based on those principles rather than a solitary ban, because a ban does not accord the transgender athlete any access whatsoever. Science would dictate that there are going to be sports or certain situations that I can give you a few examples that would allow transgender athletes to participate without causing any of the problems you're working about. And they would be less restrictive alternatives. For example, if a child transitions before they get to puberty, in this case we're talking about a transgender girl, and takes puberty blockers, then takes medication to not get testosterone, she would never have gone through puberty. She would not have the male growth spurt. She would not have testosterone. There is no way she has any competitive advantage. She's not going to have a size advantage or a competitive advantage. Yes, sir.
Am I not wrong that we passed legislation that does not allow that type of treatment to a child under 17, 18?
I think that
Under our laws now, people in the future would not be able to do that. 'cause
well,
you're
two
not
things
getting
about
the
that. One
treatment.
is there are students who are already receiving that treatment. The second is that law, my understanding, does not prohibit children who live in New Hampshire from receiving that treatment. It prohibits them from receiving that treatment in New Hampshire. So they could go to Massachusetts, which is where I would imagine a lot of people get healthcare in Massachusetts, so they can get that treatment. But my point is that there is another way to view this, which is instead of a guaranteed ban in every single case, you could say if a child has started the transition before puberty, that they would be allowed to participate. In what way is that a danger to anybody's daughter? They're not going to be bigger. They're not going to be stronger. None of those things are going to happen. So why not allow that as part of your bill? That step would acknowledge that that transgender girl is a girl. And that's a huge step. If you write that into this bill, you're now going from the rhetoric of saying transgender girls are boys and they don't exist, they're not real people, to saying, no, they actually do exist. And we're going to acknowledge that in New Hampshire. I think that'd be a big exception to put into the law. The other thing is there's a lot of evidence that indicates there is no competitive advantage for transgender athletes if they take suppressing drugs. The Canadian Centre for Ethics in the Sport did a 10-year review of all peer-reviewed studies in 2022. It's called Literature Review, does not support bans on transgender women athletes. And they said after 12 months, there's no firm basis available in evidence to indicate trans women have a consistent and measurable overall performance benefit after 12 months. There was an Australian study that said after 24 months of testosterone suppressing, there's no advantage in running events. So all I'm saying is it could be based on science. Instead of you imposing a ban in every single case, which is not fair to those transgender students who want to participate in a sport, look at the different sports. Not every sport's the same. If they've taken the medication for 24 months and there's no advantage, why not allow them to participate? Again, this is not the same thing as was mentioned earlier about somebody who's 45, is clearly in a male body, grew up as male. We're talking about young children. If they're making the transition, why not do that? And the last thing I want to say is that I think this whole idea of lost scholarship, which there is no evidence, you'll remember Dr. Jennifer testified about that last year. There's never been an example in New Hampshire. But what's the point of youth sports? Is it to win, or is it to grow as a person and to work with teammates and travel together and have fun? The transgender child wants to access that just as much as everybody else's child. And when you put a ban in and says to everyone, you're not welcome here, you're telling trans families, don't come to New Hampshire. You're not welcome here. So we're losing those families. We know that. We've read the stories in the paper. They're leaving the state. But other fair-minded people are saying, I don't want to live in New Hampshire. If they're young, they're 24, they went to college, they say, I'm going to pick a state. I want to be back in New England around my parents and my grandparents. I'll pick any other state because New Hampshire is developing a reputation as being intolerant as a society. This bill is not, you may solve one little problem in a couple little cases, but the damage it does to our state and to these transgender children is far outweighs that tiny advantage that you might be getting.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions? Senator Appus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. I always say this, you always answer the hard questions, so it's always appreciated. For a young athlete that's in the process of transitioning, you said there's been scientific studies. I have one that was been provided here that says after a year of more of hormonal therapy, there's no athletic advantage. That's what I have in front of me. Is there actually an agreement in the scientific community on how, far into the transitioning process an athlete, a trans woman would have to be in order for there not to be competitive advantage?
Senator Abbas, thank you for the question. I always enjoy talking with you too. So no, one of the problems is trans athletes are afraid to participate in studies because they're getting targeted left and right? So there are studies, like I gave you that Canadian study, look at all the peer-reviewed studies over a 10-year period. We need more research, but to do that, we have to be more tolerant of people and say, let's make it so that people would want to be participants in studies. But the studies that we have show that there is very, very little competitive advantage, maybe 1% or something like that. And as you go out to 18 months and 24 months, it really starts to disappear. So is there a consensus? I can't say that, but I don't think we have enough evidence yet. We need more evidence, but don't do a ban until you have the evidence. What little evidence you have says that whatever advantage there is disappearing with every month of treatment. And you heard the personal testimonies about somebody who transitioned and they can't even lift the bag of wood pellets anymore. So it just feels like we're going too far with too little evidence.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You hear people say we need to narrowly tailor this legislation, but without a consensus in the scientific community, you're asking us to wait for the science first before making the ban. But you said in your answer to my last question, there is some degree of a competitive advantage.
Okay, I thank you, Senator, for that question. That assumes that the alternative to this bill is nothing. The alternative before all these bills came along was to let sports organizations figure this out for themselves. Let the coaches, let the athletes, the leagues work it out. Each sport's going to be different. That makes a lot more sense than the state coming down and saying, we're going to, we don't have the evidence, we don't really know what we're doing, but we're going to impose a ban on every sport across the board. The alternative is not all or nothing. There's alternatives. Let youth organizations figure this out for themselves, different sports, let the coaches be involved. Listen to the trans athletes. Tell them that their voice is important too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for coming in. Devin Quinn. Devin, can you do it in under 3 minutes? You can. You know you can.
Yes, because I have to pick up my kids, and
Okay.
4 o'clock was my deadline to
Okay.
get out of here, so stay by the bell.
It's actually just struck 4.
Well, thank you for your testimony since it's 4.
My iPhone says 3:58, so 2 minutes then. Chairman Gannon and members of the committee, thank you for your time. My name is Devin Quinn from the New Hampshire Women's Foundation. We are adamantly opposed to this bill. As many have said before, this bill harms trans girls, and trans girls are girls. And that is enough for us to be adamantly opposed to this bill, full stop. And I wish that was the end of my testimony, but I'd like to add another argument to this conversation, in that this bill, in addition to harming trans girls, also harms cis girls. It harms trans girls, cis girls, and all girls. And here's how. What I read in line 16 and 17 is that the way we're determining sex is through an official birth certificate. The enforcement is not really explicitly laid out here, but it's pointing towards a birth certificate. So therefore, a birth certificate is going to be needed at some point. But earlier it says that, or later it says that boys' sports will be open to all genders and girls limited to girls or females, or what the amendment says. Meaning that there would be no reason to show a birth certificate for boys' sports, but there is a reason to show a birth certificate for a girls' sport. This is an added burden on all girls playing sports. Regardless, if you're trans or cis, if you're a girl playing sport, there's an extra layer of bureaucracy, of organization, of something else you have to do that boys don't have to do.
If you want to play a boys' sport.
No, if girls want to play girls' sports, they have to provide.
It's amended, but okay, go on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So imagine for this purpose, a mother has twins and also underrepresented group in policy, but she has twins. They're a boy and a girl. They go to high school. They both want to play volleyball. And they wake up that morning, they're ready to go try out. the boy walks right in and the girl says, "Oh, mom, I forgot. I need a birth certificate." Mom says, "I have no idea where that birth certificate is. I guess you can't try out now." That is stopping a girl from playing sports. Let's say she finds her birth certificate and she gives it. That girl maybe loses it because she's in high school. Now she's lost her birth certificate, but her brother, he didn't have to bring it, so he didn't lose it. And also, by the way, we need a birth certificate to register to vote now. So maybe this is disenfranchising girls as well. Let's say that she finds her birth certificate, she's able to try out. Let's say she makes the team. Is the coach supposed to be the person who evaluates birth certificates and knows what a legitimate birth certificate looks like or not? Is that a liability that a coach wants to take on? Because it's easier now, there's less liability for coaches to coach boys sports. So are we now limiting the amount of coaches for girls sports? Let's say that we have it, the coach has all birth certificates. Let's say an opposing team says, "I'd like to see the birth certificates of your teammates." The coach forgets to bring that copy. They lose the game, they have to forfeit it, but the boys didn't have to do that. Let's say that, you get my point.
I got your point.
This harms cis girls as well as trans girls.
Thank you for your testimony. We're all set. Thanks. Does anyone else wish to testify? Did we miss anybody along the way? Come on back up. Just repeat your name for the record.
Yeah,
also.
sure. I'll hand this in after. My name's April Landry. Once again, I am an Auburn resident. I'm here representing myself. I will skip the part about how I moved here, 20 years, wife, blah, blah, blah. While I did not come out as transgender till my mid-30s, I knew I was trans for as long as I can remember and spent my entire life wrestling with that and put off a lot of things out of fear of coming out and being, labeled as a trans person. I remember being bullied and treated differently by the kids around me that didn't know I was trans because I was just a little boy that was off. And it forced me out of sports over time because I didn't feel right in the men's sports or surrounded by men. If I had come out, I can only imagine how much less I would have felt welcome in whatever side of the thing I was in. And while I played soccer and baseball early on as a kid, I knew it wasn't for me and got out of sports early on in middle school. If I had been given the option to play field hockey or something, what would have been different for me? What opportunities did I not get because of this? I can only imagine the kids who want to be their authentic selves and are afraid to do so because of this kind of stuff being talked about all the time. While life for me was hard as a kid, this bill would make it harder for kids today than I ever had to deal with. It creates an environment where a small subset of New Hampshire kids are punished just for wanting to come out as themselves. Imagine how these kids are going to feel hearing that this decision was made at the same time that we were making decisions about prisoners and getting lumped in with that kind of stuff. That you equal you. And I'm not saying that because prisoners are bad or anything like that. I'm just, what's a kid going to think about this? And then a thing that I haven't heard a lot about at all today, it seems very unspoken, is suicide. I don't think anybody here wants kids driven to suicide, right? And yet this is going to do that. I'm going to try to read a little bit, like 2 paragraphs of something, and I'm going to be very quick because I'm a quick talker, and I'm going to try not to cry, but every time I read this, I cry. Governor Cox in Utah put this out in 2022. They were trying to figure out their sports restrictions. I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs. Finally, there's an important reason I vetoed this. I must admit, I'm not an expert on transgenderism. I struggle to understand how so much of it and the science is conflicting. When in doubt, I always try to err on the side of kindness, mercy, and compassion. I try to get proximate, and I'm learning so much from our community. They're great kids who face enormous struggles. And here's some numbers. This is obviously focused on Utah. It's not going to be New Hampshire, but you can assume the numbers are similar. In Utah, 75,000 high school kids participating in sports. 4 transgender kids were in Utah. 1 kid wanted to play sports. 86% of trans youth report suicide. I'm sorry, I'm just going to get a little sloppy. 56% of trans youth have attempted suicide. That's what's going to happen here. And I don't think any of you want that, right?
Thank you. I know it's hard. Appreciate you coming in today. Anyone else wish to testify in 459 who didn't get a chance? Seeing none, I'll end the hearing. 1 to go.